distinguished senators, honorable chairmen of the House committees on oil-related committees, chairman of the ICPC, Professor Wasanene, chairman of the EFCC, Abdulrashid Bawa, the group chief executive of the NNPC, Mr. Mele Kyari, chief executive of the Commission, the National Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, and his counterpart, the Midstream Authority, distinguished participant, the supporters and promoters of this summit, especially the country director of Conrad, Adenauer, Stephen Gang, distinguished participant, on behalf of the House of Representatives, especially its Committee on Anti-Corruption, it is my pleasure, on behalf of the committee, to welcome you to this all-important summit with the theme Enhancing Transparency and Accountability in the Oil and Gas Sector. Distinguished participants will agree that with the oil sector accounting for close to 80% of our foreign exchange earning and up to 50% of our total national revenue annually, anything that affects this sector will affect Nigeria as a country. It is in this regard that the signing of the PIA in 2021 by Mr. President was regarded as a watershed in the industry. For the first time in over 20 years, Nigeria was able to pass a legislation that has been described as very monumental, a legislation that is expected will usher in a new era in the oil and gas sector. The new law has provided the framework for unbundling of the industry in a manner that would promote transparency and accountability. In line with the pledge of the 9th House of Representatives to be at the forefront of promoting accountability and transparency in our national life, the House Committee considered it necessary and very crucial to organize this summit with a view to creating a platform where we can stress, discuss, and outline the importance of this new legislation, and in particular, the need for accountability and transparency such that Nigerians will not only understand what the new legislation has brought to bear on the operation of the NNPC, but that we will appreciate what the new role is. But more importantly, it will provide us a platform where the major operators can outline the manner or the ways in which this new legislation has provided an opportunity that will promote transparency and accountability in the operation. Because in the absence of a buy-in by Nigerians, and of course, investors in this sector, it will be very difficult for us as a country to realize the full potentials of this industry. Against this background, therefore, I would like to thank all our partners who have made it possible for this summit to take place, and to hope that at the end of the day, we would have been placed in a position to appreciate what the new regulations have brought to bear, especially in the areas of accountability and transparency, which is very, very important for the success of the new era that we have entered with this new legislation. It is on this note that I'd like to welcome you all and to wish us all a very, fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that round of applause for the chairman could come even louder. Thank you very much indeed. There is a very short video presentation on the aims and objectives of the Committee on Anti-Corruption of the House of Representatives. And this video presentation is still part of the welcome remarks of the chairman of the committee who just left the podium. So can we have that video for a few minutes, please? Like that we fix our gaze on the other. us here for the opening ceremony, the technical session. We'll follow suit after the tea break. And we also taken into cognizance the fact that you all, both senators and members of the House of Representatives, have budget difference going on. And so we won't want to keep you longer than necessary. It is therefore my honor and privilege at this point in time to invite for very brief remarks and goodwill message some of these individuals, but we'll start with the country director, Conrad Adenauer Stiftung, represented at this event by Marija Perrin, the country representative of Conrad Adenauer Stiftung. Can we please welcome her to the podium? And whilst she's making her way here, I'd like to appeal to every one individual that will be invited over here to make a remark, to please be as brief as possible and do us the honor of standing on the existing protocol as having been established by the master of ceremony. Thank you very much. Please let's welcome Marija with another round of applause. Marija, please.
President of the Senate, Senator Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan, GCON, the Right Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, Femi Jabamir-Mila, CFR, and other than that, please allow me to stand on the already established existing protocol. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, short CAS or Conrad, a German political foundation with a mandate to support strengthening democracy, good governance and the rule of law, active in Nigeria for more than 20 years now, I want to sincerely commend the House Committee on Anti-Corruption under the strong leadership of the Right Honourable Speaker for initiating the Legislative Transparency and Accountability Summit with a focus on the oil and gas sector. We come here at a very important time, dealing with matters that are becoming more and more pressing. Looking back at the developments in this year alone in the oil and gas sector worldwide, and considering that the 9th Assembly is in its final year before the 10th Assembly is going to be elected, this is really the time to be proactive and exercise the legislative duties both of the Senate and the House of Representatives to contribute reaching transparency and accountability in this crucial sector. As resident representative of a German organization funded by the German government, I am in regular contact with German and European stakeholders, members of the executive, legislative and judiciary branch of governments, experts and colleagues, and the question I get asked most of the time is the following. How come that Nigeria, a country so rich in natural resources like oil and gas, does not manage to benefit from this richness and to extend this benefit to its citizens through sustainable development? It's not always easy explaining how such a resource-rich country and the biggest producer of oil and gas in sub-Saharan Africa is at the same time one of the lowest-ranking countries in the UN Human Development Index. We cannot deny that this is also due to a visible and known lack of transparency, the absence of a reliable oil sector information, and a culture of malpractice. But the branches of government elected and nominated are there to serve Nigeria and the Nigerian citizens. And this means they need to address tough questions like this and the hard facts. The issue we are addressing here today has been known for long, but very luckily, in the past 2 years, added attention and, more importantly, action has been directed at creating a more transparent and accountable oil and gas sector. The Presidency and the 9th Assembly have done a lot. With signing the Petroleum Industry Bill into law last year, a very important step was taken. But it doesn't stop there. Implementation is key. The Petroleum Industry Act needs to be put in practice. It needs to be ensured that the high goals it is aiming for are being met. And this is crucial as, and we heard this before, the country's revenue as well as forex influx are highly dependent of the oil and gas sector. Corruption and mismanagement continue to deprive Nigerians of economic opportunities, but the oil and gas sector, at the same time, is key to Nigeria's sustainable development. If managed and allocated properly, the revenues can be invested into industrialization and value chains, education and health, and thus improve access of all Nigerians to basic public goods and services, bringing this beautiful nation to the heights it should be at. This is why transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector should be a main focus in the 2023 elections. Just too much depends on it. And looking around and seeing not only the efforts being done to hold this summit, but also the invitation being honored by so many legislators, as well as stakeholders from the relevant MDAs of the sector, today's summit should serve as an important next step towards targeted anti-corruption policies and their implementation, and towards better governance of the sector. I see this summit not only as a further debate on the topic, I see it as a necessary and important step to put the words, known data, and thoughts into action, together in a shared effort. With strengthening good and democratic governance and the rule of law being our organization's core mandate, let me emphasize this. To today's and tomorrow's legislators, members of the executive, and continue to be a reliable partner for you in supporting you towards continuous and stable democratic governance, government responsiveness, and sustainable development. Thank you all very much.
Your Excellencies, very distinguished senators, honorable members of the House of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that, yes, it's still pretty early in the morning, but it's 21 minutes past 11 a.m. by my timepiece. I also do understand that the applause I'm expecting to get after every speaker must have come on to this podium and leaves is not as resounding and welcoming as it ought to be. But of course, I'd like to share this with you, that I stumbled on a research that was done by the University of Philadelphia, United States, November 2014. And the research finding is quite amazing. And maybe we all do not know about the import of clapping. Clapping is very healthy for those who clap vigorously when it's important to clap. Each time you clap, from the research findings of the University of Philadelphia, it gives you the opportunity to visit doctors less and wrinkles-free, ageless, and in turn, clapping helps to rejuvenate the internal organs in the human body. And I think we should imbibe the culture of clapping because it's healthy to clap. Can we please give the organizers of this event and yourselves a resounding applause? Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Many thanks. And so moving on very quickly, the next goodwill message is going to be coming from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission Chairman Abdurrashid Bawa, represented by Assistant Commander Michael Wetkas, Fellow of the War College and Head of Operations of EFCC at the headquarters. Please a resounding applause for him as he makes his way here.
So I will be the first to benefit from the clap. Thank you very much. In line with the directive of the MC, let me stand on the existing protocol. The executive chairman of the EFCC is unavoidably absent because he had to attend today's Federal Executive Council. And he sends his goodwill message. He conveyed it to you, saying, I feel honored and privileged to be a part of this summit aimed at enhancing transparency and accountability in the Nigeria's oil and gas industry. I dare to say that the theme of the summit, enhancing transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector, challenges and prospects, is not only timely, but also speaks to heightened concerns about the strategic importance of the oil and gas sector and challenges beseeching the industry to the Nigerian economy. I would like to thank the Honorable Chairman, members of the House of Representatives Committee on Anti-Corruption for bringing together diverse stakeholders to have a conversation around issues of transparency and accountability in a sector that is indisputably the lifeline of the nation's economy, because it accounts for roughly 80% of national revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, the complexities in the operations of the oil and gas industry renders it vulnerable and highly susceptible to money laundering. The industry is characterized by several players and dealers in the supply chain, thus creating avenues for fraud and distortion of audit trails. This is notwithstanding the array of legislations, regulations, and directives governing various aspects of the industry. The passage of Petroleum Industry Act PIA 2021, which witnessed the harmonization and restructuring of the industry, was aimed at enhancing transparency and accountability in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, although the passage of the PIA is a great achievement for our dear country, Nigeria has witnessed with the unbundling of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC. However, there must be continuous engagement and consultations among all stakeholders in order to maximize the full potentials of the new regime. May I therefore commend the National Assembly for the passage of this very important legislation, which is focused on addressing the challenges of the industry. May I also request that you extend your oversight functions and cause investigations on the increasing menace of crude oil theft in the country. My office is currently engrossed in the investigation of allegations of crude oil theft. In addition to fighting corruption, which is epidemic in many developing oil and gas-rich countries, transparency supports accountability and reduces inefficiencies. It also enhances relationship among stakeholders as it boosts trust among the society, government, and companies, thereby reducing misperceptions and reducing local tensions. It is therefore important for the government to ensure that instituted measures aimed at enhancing transparency in the oil sector include full disclosure of NNPC joint venture arrangements and establish clear institutional responsibilities for revenue assessment, collection, and reporting. The relationship between the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, and the oversight committees of the National Assembly should also be enhanced to ensure that financial, fiscal, and governance challenges related to the oil and gas sector are analyzed and discussed as much as possible. In addition, these steps could be combined with examinations of audit reports by parliamentary committees, allowing public hearing during the review process and submission of reports to Parliament on issues addressed in audit reports. Furthermore, the role of NEITI as the watchdog of the oil and gas sector in providing actionable intelligence to law enforcement authorities cannot be overemphasized. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the National Assembly has a duty through its relevant committees to ensure diligent oversight of the entities and players in the different sectors of the petroleum industry. It should not be business as usual if we hope to derive the desired value from the nation's hydrocarbon resources. For us in the EFCC, we are determined to continue to work closely with stakeholders in the extractive sector to enforce accountability. We will continue to hold accountable those who breach the public trust in the sector, whether they be corporations or individuals, whether local or foreign. The laws enforced by the Commission target contraventions of legal stipulations on transparency and accountability in both public and private sectors. Honorable members, as far as the extractive industry is concerned, the most critical challenge is how to achieve a pro-Nigerian meeting of minds on the platform of external laws and regulations between investors and regulators. Enthroning transparency and accountability in the petroleum industry might seem an arduous task, but we believe in the EFCC that whatever we are determined to achieve is doable. Let us all join hands together to rescue the Nigerian extractive industry from the grips of unscrupulous players in the quest of seeing a Nigeria free of economic and financial crimes. I wish you all very productive deliberations. Thank you very much.
There's another round of applause for Michael Wetkas, who's got the privilege for Abdul Rashid Power to have spoken through him at this very summit. But I don't know how many of you took cognizance of his semblance with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation. Did you see that? He looks very much like his younger brother. But it's all good. Thank God you don't bear the same names. Would have mistaken you for him. Anyway, please, another round of applause for him. Thank you so very much as we move on. I'd like to, at this point in time, invite the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. The chairman is here in flesh and blood. And being a professor, I do take cognizance of what professors are able to do. If you give a professor 5 minutes for a lecture, he could spend 30. But I'd like to plead with you, sir, that today you won't have as many minutes as 30. But please take the very little 5 minutes that we've allotted to you for your remarks. Please, let's welcome Professor Bolaji Onwasoye, SAN.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, represented by Honorable Akpatasen, other distinguished members of the National Assembly who are here. I'm told the Senate President is also represented. I recognize you, sir, or ma'am. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all front-load my apology for my absence from the panel session that will come up. And since I would have about 5 minutes at the panel session, that gives me about 10 minutes here. First, let me congratulate the National Assembly, especially the House of Representatives, and most particularly the Anti-Corruption Committee, for its focus on implementing the legislative agenda of the institution. The legislature has found an able ally in Conrad Adenauer stiff tongue, and on this occasion, other stakeholders in the anti-corruption and extractive sector, in particular the oil and gas sector. I want to commend the NEITI legislature for many wonderful legislative measures designed to catalyze development and set the nation in the trajectory of growth and development. Much more is required, but we can acknowledge the milestones thus far, one of which is the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act last year. The theme for today's conversation is appropriate because corruption and opacity of operations, incompetent governance, fraudulent revenue management, and insensitive treatment of environmental and host community issues have over the years undermined the benefit of the God-given natural resource to host communities in particular and Nigeria in general. The passage of PIA and the full privatization of NNPC is but a very small first step in a marathon race towards attaining the benefit of reforms. The challenges in the sector are aptly demonstrated by the recent public revelation of what many players in the sector knew was happening all along, viz., the diversion, or to put it boldly, the outright theft of oil by the conspiracy and collaboration of private and public sector players. This revelation was no less from a person than the GMD of the newly privatized NNPC itself. Now, the poor governance structure in the sector has over the years fueled many anomalies, including the menace of illicit financial flows in the sector. I will speak very briefly about this and the modest effort that ICPC is making towards mitigating this problem and the fundamental structures and issues that enables them. I will not bore you with very well-known relevance of the oil and gas sector to the Nigerian economy and the statistics that you as legislators want to have, and indeed mandatory that you must have. We all know that this sector accounts for over 65% of government revenue. Maybe not this year, because there's been no oil revenue this year. More than 90% of FX earnings for the country, and about 99% of extractive industry revenue. That is, I'm speaking about the oil and gas sector. On account of these indicators, Nigeria is set to account for the highest illicit financial flows from Africa, with a concentration in the extractive sector. And the oil and gas in particular sector accounts for about 92% of IFFs from Nigeria, according to the AU-ECA high-level panel report. By implication, to effectively and significantly reduce the menace of IFFs from Nigeria, we have to focus on the extractive industry, especially the oil and gas sector. As I said earlier on, the first step is a new legal and regulatory framework which has been achieved with the passage of the PIA. But laws do not implement themselves. The culture that undermined the previous legal regime can easily undermine this new legal regime if we are not conscious to faithfully implement and oversight role players in the sector. Therefore, in order to deepen transparency in the oil and gas sector, I want to make a few recommendations for consistent action. The first, of course, is consistent and transparent audits. Recall that for many, many years, NNPC never published an audit of its accounts until this administration, and I believe under Melekari, the audit that I'm recommending is not just financial audit, but also regular audit of physical assets and, of course, process audits. Secondly, there must be regular review and update of contract negotiation practices. And many of the clauses and agreements that facilitate illicit financial flows and that steal money away from the very stare of legislators and executive and minister and civil society are hidden in agreements that are innocuously normal, and they are ordinary, and they appear to be consistent with business practice, but they are actually not. These agreements were in the past consciously negotiated by government and NNPC line officers. The fact that NNPC has changed from NNPC to NNPC Limited does not mean the brains of those who used to negotiate the agreements have changed. And unless they acquire new skills and understanding, they will remain victims of the anomalies within the sector, and within 1 to 2 years, Nigeria will suddenly realize that the very high expectation from returns in this sector have not been met. Some of the negotiators, and I'm speaking from a position of authority, I used to train government legal advisors, including people from NNPC. Indeed, I do believe that about a year ago, I forwarded one of my reports on NNPC to Melekari. I sent it to him by WhatsApp, and I've checked this morning and I saw it, in which I indicated a whole range of, and I'm talking of something about 10, 12 years ago or more, a whole range of things that need to be done. It's not just about changing nomenclatures or changing titles. It's about changing the ability of those who will be representing the country through NNPC to negotiate agreements. Terms of contracts and clauses in these agreements should be explicitly negotiated in language to avoid ambiguities. Because some of the negotiators were not experts in their field, they wittingly or unwittingly, wittingly when they are corrupted, unwittingly because they are simply ignorant, made concessions against the interests of the country. Importantly, we must discard completely confidential clauses that forbid the operators of government from disclosing terms negotiated with parties. Now, given the fact that these agreements are about natural resources and being on the sector that the public is interested in and the patrimony and assets of the public, confidential clauses that fuel corruption and abuse should be totally outlawed. Now, I am not sure about what NNPC will do. I do not anticipate that NNPC will retain confidential clauses in any agreements. Now, confidential clauses lead to abuse. You find them in loan agreements. You find them especially in extractives, where certain parameters are negotiated and it is not disclosed to third parties. If the legislature wants to oversight, you cannot tell what has been agreed. It used to be that the Minister of Petroleum had powers to modify the terms of agreement through side letters that he was not obliged to share with anyone. All of these practices should no longer be acceptable within the sector. Discretionary powers and excessive discretion in granting incentives should also be checked and curtailed. Now, I admit that some of these are partly addressed by the passage of the PIA and the expectation that the NNPC will act in accordance with commercial and economic interests, not just of the company, but of the country. But we should not make assumptions. The risk, as I find it, lies in the possible overbearing influence of government, even though government is now in the shadows. But nevertheless, being there because government is the largest shareholder, either through Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated or Ministry of Finance Incorporated, even if government were not in the shadows, extant constitutional and statutory provisions regarding entities in which government has shares remain a trigger for abuse. Now, this is what I'm saying. There are provisions that says that when government has shares in any company whatsoever, there are certain restrictions for those who work in that corporation. So technically speaking, NNPC is a private company, but in fact, statutorily, there could be pressure to make it conform to government. I'm talking law here, including the Constitution, so we need to check. It is expected that the new PIA regime, with the new PIA regime, there will be more transparent and mandatory disclosure of the fiscal governance side of operations. Corporate governance rules alone will not achieve the standard that is required because government, as main shareholder in any business, government is a bad businessman. Government hardly makes profit, but we want NNPC to make profit. So NNPC needs to be allowed to be able to take measures that enables it to make profit. I will suggest, I will soon finish, sorry. I will suggest that privatization of NNPC does not eliminate extractive industry transparency standard of publish what you pay for oil and gas and mining companies disclosing revenue payments they make through NNPC, with NNPC, in doing business with NNPC, making those informations available to stakeholders, including the legislature and civil society. Secondly, publish what you earn, government disclosing the revenues that is received from extractive companies, and when we evaluate, we find out what government is saying matches what NNPC is saying, and publish what you spend. Government publishing in full budgetary expenditures from such revenue. To strengthen transparency, we need legislation that supports statistical reporting, not just for oil and gas sector, but in fact for the entire extractive sector, for public disclosure of revenue received and paid. Hopefully, consistent application of these measures should improve governance. Together, these steps form a package that enables citizens to hold government to account for the use of oil and gas revenues. And it will consequentially increase government's legitimacy and credibility. Now, the final point is that there is need for stronger oversight of the operations, especially the commercial and tax obligation of multinational corporations that NNPC will be dealing with. Some of us may know, some may not know, aggressive tax avoidance by multinational corporations is costing Nigeria a huge chunk in illicit financial flows, and this must be addressed. Some multinational corporations falsify trade records, they fuel transfer pricing, they inflate operational costs, and they retain on their payroll people as expatriates who are nowhere near Nigeria. Staff who work remotely but make huge entitlement from claims, amongst many, many other anomalous practices. The privatization of NNPC does not protect it from sharp business practices of multinational corporations. If they were doing it against the NNPC under government, they will continue to do it against the NNPC privatized. There's no difference. NNPC must just shine his eyes. NNPC and Nigeria therefore remain vulnerable to the corruption process, the illegal exploitation of natural resources, and of course to tax evasion. So privatizing NNPC is just one step. All of these things remain and we've got to deal with them. Let me close by saying, what has ICPC done in this regard? ICPC serves as the Secretariat for the Interagency Committee on Illicit Financial Flows. And since I resumed in the Commission and given my insight into this sector, I'd focused a lot on capacity building for line officers from member agencies in particular, but other MDAs on negotiation of agreements. If you sign a bad agreement, the courts do not exist to help you repair a bad agreement. You have to face the consequences of a bad agreement. And the evidence on the ground right now is that Nigeria is actually losing about 60-something% of revenue to bad agreements. We are focused on the sectors that facilitate IFFs, notably the oil and gas, trade and investment, taxation, and the environment. We teach and tell the officers what to look for in agreements and commercial arrangements in the quest to trace, to stop, and to recover diverted or stolen assets. We also focus on the triggers for capital flight, such as, for example, I think by now most Nigerians understand the inimical use of arbitration clauses to undermine national development. That's a very easy example for me to use because it's in the public domain, but it has huge implications. So in closing, I am looking forward to the impact of not just this legal reform, which should translate to administrative reforms within NNPC, governance reforms for the regulators, both upstream and mid and downstream, the fiscal regime, and of course the management of host community issues. This remains a very sticky point. For example, if we improve the management of host community issues, we should see a logical end to the presidential amnesty program, which presently is gulping a lot of money that is also opaque. So if NNPC succeeds and deals with this issue, PAP should just die a natural death. And the country will save huge sums of money that used to be put in this sector, and we'll have much more to put into education, health, and infrastructure. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
I just said to the Chairman ICPC, thank you very much, sir. And the question he asked me is if he doesn't know if I'm happy for the amount of time he has taken. But of course it is worth our while because you have just, in the course of your remarks, you've just given us an insight as to understanding the remarkable achievements made in the oil and gas sector, especially with you as a watchdog for corruption. And of course, for you to come on this stage and pay glowing tributes to the very tremendous achievements and the discovery made by the NNPC Limited Group Chief Executive Officer, honestly for me it is a plus for NNPC, and I think Mele Kyari and his team deserve a bigger round of applause, because without them we wouldn't have been able to make this discovery on oil thefts in Nigeria. Please, Honorable Mr. Mele Kyari, you don't even have a title, so let me just say, Mele Kyari, you deserve this round of applause. Please give it to him one more time. And to the Chairman ICPC, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you so much. I had even expected that the round of applause from senators and distinguished honorable members would have been a lot more resounding. Reasons are that this is the man that raises your appraisal when it comes to consistency projects. So please, can we give ICPC's chairman another round of applause, because it's been very cooperative. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to just mention and recognize once again that the President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Ahmad Ibrahim Lawan, is represented at this occasion by the Senate Committee Chairman on Anti-Corruption, distinguished Senator Suleiman Abdul Kwari, and we also have the Deputy Whip of the Senate here with us, and Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on Local Content, distinguished Senator Dr. Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. Would like to appreciate your presence. Distinguished Senator Francis Ali Mekena, Chairman, Senate Committee on Customs, and a member of the Gas Committee, is also here with us. We welcome you. Distinguished Senator Degi Bayobarakuma, Chairman, Senate Committee on Local Content, is also here with his Vice Chairman, Distinguished Senator Professor Nora Dadut. We thank you very much for coming. We just want to ensure that we just mentioned that the senators, Senator Francis Ali Mekena, I've mentioned you, Senator Michael Nachi, Senator Biggie Barinada, Senator Frank Ibazim, Senator Benos Yaro. They are all members of this committee, and painstakingly they have decided to sit down here and listen, as well as the Chairman, Senate Committee on Power, Distinguished Senator Gabriel Suswa. We'd like to appreciate all of you. Please, can we give all the distinguished senators a round of applause? I've done this to prove a point. This is an event that is organized by the House Committee on Anti-Corruption. And you can imagine the number of senators that have come to grace this occasion. It shows that the Committee of the House on Anti-Corruption and that of the Senate are working in sync. And would like to appreciate these type of symbiotism. Please, let's give them a bigger round of applause, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for coming. The representative of the Speaker of the House of Representatives would like to also appreciate the fact that you've also left everything you're doing to come and join us here. Now, I'd like to also mention that we are live on the networks of Channels Television, the Ubiquitous, and AIT, Africa Independent Television. And why did I have to mention that over and over again? It is for you to know that someone is watching from home or abroad. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And moving on very quickly because of time, I'd like to invite at this point in time the Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NEITI, who also doubles as a National Coordinator for Global Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, AIT. My brother, my mentor in the broadcast industry, Dr. Oji Ogbonnaya Oji. Please, a round of applause for him.
The President of the Senate, ably represented, the Honorable Speaker also represented, distinguished senators, honorable members, the Chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption, Honorable Shehu Garba, who actually brought all of us here, my colleagues, heads of agencies, government agencies, Prof, who just spoke last, and the MD of the NNPC, Authority, NUPRC, and so on. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues in the media, we are very impressed with this event, and it shows, it confirms our belief and strong allies, strong partnership, strong collaboration with the National Assembly. When we received this invitation, we thought that this is how it should be. I don't want to dwell on all that the National Assembly has done, especially this particular assembly, in enhancing civic space, enhancing the opportunities for transparency and accountability in the extractive industry, I think a lot of accolades and more will still come on what they have done in the PIA, in review of certain laws and all other actions that seemed impossible in the past, which they have done. I think this National Assembly will go down in history, from all I know, as one of a team that came and did very marvelous job in that sector, from all that we know. And I am here just to also affirm the fact that we are working very closely with the National Assembly. For purposes of recollection, Nigeria signed on to the Global Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative in 2004, began implementation the same year, and the National Assembly at that time supported implementation with a specific law, the NEITI Act of 2007. And that law became the first by any EITI implementing country around the world. Currently, there are 57 member countries implementing the EITI. Some are countries that have used the opportunity of the presence of oil, gas, and mining in their countries to support national development, reduce poverty, and enhance the prosperity and good life for their citizens. Others, a majority, especially from the sub-Saharan Africa, are countries that have mismanaged completely that opportunity. So the EITI is an assembly of those who have behaved well and those who have behaved badly within that community. Those who have behaved well expect those who have behaved badly to learn and see whether they can implement reforms. And that reform is exactly what Nigeria EITI is currently implementing. And what do? We simply annually engage the companies to establish what exactly have they paid to government in terms of taxes, royalties, rents, concessions. We look at the agreements and purposes that underpin those transactions. We also looked at how much oil did Nigeria produce in a given year. And we designed a suite of templates that suits the operations of those who receive the revenue and those who pay. The companies declare what they have paid, and the government agencies declare what they have received. From the work we have done over the years, it was clear to us that between the point of payment and the point of receipt, a lot of revenue, in foreign exchange, develop wings and fly away. And NEITI has the responsibility to trace where they are, especially if there are monies that ought to accrue to federal government. From our records, between 1999 and 2020, Nigeria has earned $741.74 billion on oil and gas alone. In the solid mineral sector, we are only counting in Naira, 624 billion Naira has been earned. A forum like this should be interested in data, and that is where NEITI will continue to insist that we work with the National Assembly. The National Assembly needs information and data on what is paid, what is received, what the money has been used for. And NEITI has that data in quantum, where we're housed and carefully managed. The challenge we have at the moment is that that data is not being properly used. When we finish our report and send to National Assembly, we plead and we are pleading and we are still begging, engaging with them, that we expect our report to be led in plenary and debated, so that a forum like this, you'll be speaking from data and information of knowledge. We have a lot of data and information on who is owing what has been paid, what has been received, what has been produced, what was exported, what was consumed locally, and so on and so forth. We've been engaging with relevant committees, but we want our engagement to be upgraded to the level of laying our report in plenary and debating it, and possibly committing the same to giving it the kind of attention that the Assembly often gives to the reports from the Auditor General of the Federation, because the two of them wear the same cap and the same nomenclature. But let me use this opportunity to thank you and to say that we are willing, we are available, the information is there, the data is there, and to support you with that information. And because we can't see how effectively you can engage in oversight function in the sector without reliable information and data. Our 2021 report will be published next month. We are working very hard, and we have just currently automated our process to ensure data reliability and the data efficiency, and to reduce cost of even engaging with the sector. We also have currently just launched a program to establish a data center. The data center will require is very important for the sector, not just for the companies or for the government agencies, but it's also very important for National Assembly, the civil society, and the media. On that note, I would like to bring you one greetings from the board management of NEITI and ask that we'll continue to engage with you. Thank you for all the support you've given us, and promise that NEITI will be willing and very available to work with you going forward. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you, and thank you for the comments, and of course, the fact that this is another agency of government that has come in the public domain and public glare to raise appraisal of the workings and the commitments of the Senate and the House of Representatives. I think he deserves a bigger round of applause. Can we give him one more, please? Thank you very much. Moving on, Your Excellencies, very distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives, and resource persons and rapporteurs as well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The next remarks is going to be coming from the Commission Chief Executive, NUPRC, Mr. Gbenga Komolafe, who is just 1 year old on the saddle and has recorded very tremendous achievements. Is Mr. Gbenga Komolafe here, please? Or his representative? If he's not, we'll move on very quickly. I thought I saw him earlier on in the hall. If he's not here, we will then, okay, we have someone representing, and this time is a beautiful lady. Unfortunately, your name was not supplied to me, but I'm sure by the time you get here, we'll have details of your person and your designation in NUPRC. What's the name, ma'am? Rosendong, Executive Commissioner, Exploration and Great Management. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm round of applause for her. She's standing in for the Chief Executive Officer of NUPRC, Mr. Gbenga Komolafe. You have the microphone.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I will just nicely stand on existing protocol as established. Attempting anything else, I'll mess up everything. So, good morning, distinguished senators, distinguished honorable members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As you've rightly been told, unfortunately, my Commission Chief Executive Officer is very unavoidably absent. He's currently out of the country, and he has asked that I present what is just purely a goodwill message. So mine is going to be very short, which I'm sure the organizer will be very pleased to hear. I'm just going to present his goodwill message to this summit, and that's all I will do here. And just like my brother from the EFCC had said, I'm just going to be reading his own speech. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to deliver this goodwill message to you on this very auspicious occasion of the Legislative Transparency and Accountability Summit, being organized by the House Committee on Anti-Corruption. The theme of this summit, which is enhancing transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector, challenges and prospects, is indeed timely, considering the enactment of the Petroleum Act of 2021. I would therefore like to use this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event, the House of Representatives, Committee on Anti-Corruption and other collaborating partners for putting it and making it possible. As you are aware, the PIA 2021 was enacted to promote transparency, good governance, accountability in administration of the petroleum resources of Nigeria. As such, the institutions created by the Act, the Commission being one of them, are saddled with this mandate. We at the Commission have put all hands on deck to ensure the full implementation of the provisions of this Act. In order to give intent and meaning to the Act, the Commission has developed priority regulations which will help in the governance and achievement of this mandate. We have also been working very closely with the National Assembly on ensuring the full implementation of the law and closing out on the challenges that have so far been faced. We will continue with this collaboration to ensure the full implementation for the good of the industry and the benefits of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, this summit provides the right platform for us to share our successes as well as our challenges in the journey towards full implementation of the Act. On this note, I would wish to us all for us all to have a very fruitful engagement and summit. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to participate in the panel later, but like I said earlier, it's just purely a goodwill message from my Chief Executive. Thank you very much for listening and happy deliberations.
Thank you very much. Standing in for the Chief Executive Officer of NUPRC. Appreciate. And you've actually done the bit that is expected of you. The Authority Chief Executive of NMDPRA, Mr. Farouk Ahmed, is represented at this event and this very auspicious summit by Barrister Obugo Ukoa, Executive Director, Distribution Systems Storage, and is here. He's going to be standing in for, I think, the retail value chain and all the things that comes with it. I have not taken down that pretty too well, but I'm sure for him to have asked you to stand in for him, you have his notes. So ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor. Let's welcome him with a resounding applause as well. And in the same vein, please stand on the existing protocol. Thank you, sir.
The President of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, also ably represented, distinguished senators and honorable members of the House, let me also please stand on established protocol. On behalf of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority's Chief Executive, Alhaji Farouk Ahmed, who is unavoidably absent, I am honored to convey the NMDPRA's goodwill to this summit with the theme, Enhancing Transparency and Accountability in the Oil and Gas Sector, Challenges and Prospects. First, let me commend the National Assembly on the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA 2021, which is indeed a major milestone for the Nigerian oil and gas industry. The PIA establishes a new regulatory governance, fiscal and administrative regime for the Nigerian oil and gas industry, and also establishes the NMDPRA, amongst others, to enable competitive, efficient and transparent growth in the mid and downstream sector of the value chain. In NMDPRA, our attention is focused on achieving these goals. Particularly, let me highlight a few of the authority's outcomes towards enabling transparency and accountability in the industry. 1, the daily publishing of statistics such as stocks, stock level, truck out figures, gas market reports, and etc. 2, regular stakeholder engagements on midstream and downstream operations, both as a feedback loop and providing key metrics for investors' decision making. 3, collaborating with security and intelligence agencies to secure and account for every molecule measured and moved through the value chain. 4, full disclosure and openness towards annual audits requested by agencies such as NEITI and other government agencies. 5, continuous process reviews and automation to bolster accountability and provide clarity of regulatory processes. 6, publishing of 21 draft regulations in line with the PIA. And 7th, and which is very important to the authority, the regular reporting to the National Assembly in the exercise of their constitutional oversight responsibility. Indeed, I should extend special commendation to the committees that oversight the authority, both the Senate Committee on Downstream and the House Committee on Downstream as well, for the kind of support that they have always provided to the authority. Finally, let me conclude by applauding the committee for its efforts thus far in propagating this atmosphere of collaboration, accountability, and transparency in the sector. And every stakeholder is assured that the authority's regulatory support will be on offer to create value. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ukoha, standing in for the Authority Chief Executive, Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency. And the very first person that spoke in the oil and gas sector as an agency of government or commission is NUPRC, and it stands for, especially for my colleagues in the journalism profession, it stands for, NUPRC stands for Nigeria Upstream and Regulatory Commission. And I need you to just take that down so that we're on the same page. Thank you very much. Moving in, Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, represented here by the Chairman of the Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption, distinguished Senator Suleiman Abdul Kwari, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Chief Host of this event, the Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, CFR, ably represented by the House Committee Chairman on Anti-Corruption, Honorable Shehu Garba. Permit me to stand on the existing protocol. As I tell you, this is the climax of this event, especially where the man who has made some great discoveries in terms of oil theft lately is going to be invited to speak. And I need that we put our pens to paper, because in the course of his remarks, he might reveal some more. And I know him for that. Very transparent and upright Chief Executive Officer of NNPC. Please join me in welcoming to the podium for his keynote address. Let's welcome Mele Kyari, OFR.
Let me avoid all protocols and to thank you for your time. And obviously, the Right Honorable Speaker and the Senate President duly recognized and appreciated. But beyond this, let me just start by saying something very bluntly, which is that we are not perfect. We make mistakes, but we don't make deliberate mistakes. And I would also like to use this opportunity to thank Professor, Chairman of ICPC, and also the Chairman of EFCC for their very open and frank revelations and recommendations. Needless to say that we have very, very valuable engagement with these two institutions of state, aimed at reducing corruption and also bringing back value on the table for our country. And I've severally stated, corruption is about discretion. Once you take away discretion, corruption will vanish. Because no one will pay you for anything, no one will give you money if he knows that you don't have discretion. This discretion manifests in very, very different ways. Discretion for you to let go, discretion for you to do something that you shouldn't do, and discretion for somebody to look the other way. All of them, if that institution or the person does not have that authority, it doesn't have that discretion, people will naturally walk away from it. And therefore, the easiest route to curbing corruption is by minimizing discretion, or reducing discretion, or eliminating it. Of course, in businesses, it's very difficult to say you have total elimination of discretion, because sometimes discretion is also part of business. We recognize this. But as long as you are able to reduce discretion, you will be in a position to reduce corruption substantially. And the only way to do this is for you to be transparent and accountable to your shareholders, to your stakeholders, sharing data, sharing information that they ordinarily not be made public. And we can say this very confidently about the NNPC today. It's the only company in the world that publishes its monthly performance data. No company does it anywhere in the world. And not only that, NNPC didn't publish its audited financial statements for over 40 years of its operations. We don't want to lament. Why didn't we do it? That's just a lamentation. It's not useful. But we did publish our statement of account, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And by no means is a perfect document, but it did give us the opportunity to x-ray what we are doing, how we can improve our system and processes, which professors also referred to. And this is continuous improvement, because without this level of transparency and accountability, you cannot get the results that you are getting. And therefore, a legislative collaboration between the National Assembly and the institutions of state, particularly in the oil and gas industry, is very critical for the growth and development of our country. As I've been saying in very many different words and different ways, the energy sector, or the oil and gas sector, remains very critical to national development. There's no country that has developed without energy, anywhere in the world, particularly power. And you can't do this if you are not able to harness your resources, or you are not able to consolidate the value that is there for the benefit of the people. And those people can be shareholders, can be generality of Nigerians. But more than anything, if you do not harness those resources equitably in a transparent manner, you cannot achieve those developments. And that's why it's important to see a situation where the energy sector becomes completely transparent and accountable, and by legislation, by the way. And let me congratulate the National Assembly for passing the Petroleum Industry Act, because the law was very clear about many things that we can no longer do. Transparency of your operations, licenses, and everything, including revenues, which my friend and brother Ogbonna has referred to, that you no longer can hold it back. Now by legislation, that there are things that you have to do, that not doing it becomes an infringement of the law, and you can go to jail, and nobody wants to go to jail. And as we continue to improve on this, you will see that this industry will serve its purpose. Purpose is to provide energy today, provide energy also for tomorrow. But as you are doing this, you create the revenues. And I would like to also particularly refer to a few things Professor has brought up. Permit me, because of the time constraint, not to read my research, so we'll share this with the organizers. But needless to say that contract transparency is everything. And I have the privilege of being around a number of the contractual engagements, particularly around legislation, for many years to come. And without mentioning a company's name or a partner's name, I have been confronted 12 years ago that our law was written by a company. And this is how bad it can get, not just contracts, Professor, even laws can be written by business interests. And today, what we have on ground within our company and within the industry, I can speak actually generally about this, is that there is so much change that has taken place by legislation, by mere necessity of today, that many of the things, the infractions that we know today don't exist anymore. It's actually not possible to do. In NNPC today, we have passed through a delegation of authority and delegation of financial authority policy in the company. There are many things that can never come into contracts again. It's not possible anymore. Nobody can do it. So even if you are in a committee writing of a contract, you can't do it anymore because you no longer have the authority or the responsibility to do this. And that's why we are focused on making sure that systems and processes are automated, systems and processes respect policies, policies are clear, they respond to what best of practice that you can find anywhere in the world in such a manner that the officers doing it are simply delivery agents and they can change very few of the things that we see on the ground. And of course, no doubt, abilities need to be upgraded. Needless to say that we're not saying that we have all the skills that is required, and that is why we are doing a very ambitious program of skilling our workers so that they can catch up with the realities of today. But we have taken the first step, which is making sure the right policies, right processes are on ground so that those decisions can be made very, very easily. And I agree with Prof that confidentiality clauses in agreements is always a root cause of some of the challenges that we have. Sometimes very valid arguments can come forward and say, look, this is a commercial transaction, can we disclose this at this point in time? And what the industry has come to accept, including in the EITI platform, is that yes, some conversations may have commercial implication. If you disclose it the moment it is done, some people can take advantage. So can we have time frame within which you must disclose it? And the average timing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that no contract should be private after 1 year. And that way, you can preserve the commercial interest, and at the same time, you're also able to make it known and to all stakeholders. And this company must act on behalf of its shareholder. The shareholder has the 200 million Nigeria, irrespective of what the next generation of compensation will be. The law provided that we can scale down the equity of the state in this company. Yes, it's a provision of the PIA, but today it is not so. And therefore, it's essentially a company owned by the public, and therefore, essentially a government company. But can government companies make profit? Yes, it is. It has happened. And I can share data with you, which is also in our published data statements of accounts. In 2018, we made loss of 803 billion naira. In 2019, we reduced the losses to 1.3 billion naira. By 2020, we made net profit of 287 million naira. By 2021, which we have published, we made a net profit of 687 billion naira. So it is possible to make profit. But is that the capacity of a company that has assets worth over $60 billion? No. The answer is no. Because people who have less capacity, less assets in their hands, are making stupendous profits. And that's also practical. And you can't do this also until you change your system and your processes. And we're on that trajectory, that we are doing things to make sure that this happens for our company. But we can do better than what we are doing today. And then dealing with multinational oil companies. The strength of any agreement is in the capacity of your team members who negotiate this contract. And this has been a Herculean task in the oil and gas industry, or the energy industry. Partners do take advantage of their partners. It does happen. But there's also a common rule in the oil and gas industry that when you take advantage of your partner, he will come to realize it years later and he will pay back at you. And companies are very, very conscious of this and very aware of this, and companies do take necessary steps to make sure that those don't happen. And for us, for every business like our own, is to make sure that you have systems and processes that enable your team members not to do certain things. Governance that is in multiple levels, such a way that the team member himself cannot make those commitments, and there are various levels of governance that is there in the system today now. And because we are now a commercial company bothered by the rules of the company and allied matters, there are things you cannot do anymore. And therefore, every level of authority has what they know what they can do, and they know what they can't do. And those controls probably were not very, very obvious in the past, and that has taken care of some of this. And the issue around crude oil theft, I think it's very important to respond to it this moment, is that the scale that we saw and we discovered clearly, and the best of, I don't know how best to put it, is that not anticipated, not expected, not thought of, and we didn't know that this is happening. This is the reality, but the scale is enormous. You have seen pipelines taken from our main trunk lines into abandoned platforms in which people come to steal oil. You have seen the thousands of illegal refineries that we have taken down in the last 4 to 5 months. We have seen connection in a 200-kilometer line. You have up to 295 connections, illegal connections to your pipelines. And many of them have been there for years. And not only that, that you have a situation where your production came down to about 1.1 million barrels from high of 1.8 about January of last year. And the reason is that not all of them is stolen. Let me make it clarify, because there are a lot of misconception around the bill that when you come down to 1.9, the balance is stolen. No, because companies will stop injecting oil into the pipeline the moment they discover that it cannot get to the terminal. And therefore, at the peak of your production, you can lose as much as 200,000 barrels per day. But once companies discover that this production doesn't get to the terminal, they will terminate it. This is very normal. So it's opportunity lost. We are losing up to 700,000 barrels of opportunity. But in terms of stealing, I can also happily also mention today that we are able to restore 2 of our trunk lines after the interventions that is taking place today now, after the discoveries that we have made. And some of these interventions, and let me also face it promptly, that we were left with no choice than to involve private security contractors. And it worked, because that collaboration at the level of the community and the private contracting complemented our government security agency. They have done great work today. The Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Air Force, the Nigerian Army, the Department of State Service, and including Nigerian Police. Everybody is making contributions today in a manner that there are layers of interventions, layers of controls today that is paying off. And I can tell you that, and I also need to respond to this clearly. In the public space, say, oh, how much money are you spending on this private contractor? You see, everything we are doing is no more than a day's production. And you have lost 4 to 5 months of production. It means nothing in this industry if you can recover your production from just a day's cost. And this is really what has happened. And we're very happy that this partnership has worked, and we'll continue to improve on it. By no means is that normal, absolutely not. Non-state actors helping the state in sorting out problems, not common to Nigeria, not something that is unusual. It does happen, but it has worked for us. And lastly, without mincing words, to say that this industry is in the threshold of a change. It's a massive change, very expensive, personal cost to many people, including myself. Threats to life, and I can say this, I have several death threats to myself, but we're not bothered about this, so we believe that no one dies until his time has come. That's not an issue at all. I'm not saying so that I say, oh, please don't die, because I know I will die. So that's not the issue. But this is the cost of change. When people walk away from things that they are used to something that is new, something that will take away value and benefit from them, they will react. And that reaction is beneficial to us, for all of us, that will work together to make sure that this works. And lastly, please, and another last, it's about fuel subsidy. I know my colleague has mentioned in a very indirect manner, so let me talk to it directly. Revenues not delivered to the federation account. Why won't institutions deliver revenues into the federation account? And without missing words, you cannot eat your cake and have it. You cannot smoke cigarette and look for the smoke. You can't get it. So today, NNPC by law is required to ensure and guarantee energy security. Energy security in all its forms, particularly making sure that petroleum products are available to the country. We have made a law which provided, the Appropriation Act provided for subsidy on petroleum, just an example. And it put a value, but the state doesn't have the money. So when I give you an invoice, you cannot settle it. And therefore, you have no way of settling this except through offset against fiscal obligations. And what fiscal obligation does NNPC have? Taxes, royalties, and profit oil. And therefore, you cannot deliver this fiscal obligation and also be able to import product and sell at sub-market price. So it is not possible. And what we are doing now is that we will give credit note to FRS. We will also give credit note to the upstream regulator and the downstream regulator for the fiscal obligation that we cannot meet. And also submit a debit note to the Ministry of Finance so that they will settle us. So ultimately, you are accountable for it, and I have asked for this, that we are open to an open forensic audit of everything we are doing, and we are inviting it so that the Nigerians will know what we are doing. But it is not possible for you to buy fuel at 170, 165 naira when your actual cost is far, far away, thrice that value. For instance, let me also make it clear so that we also understand what exactly this subsidy means. It's very important for us to appreciate this. And I'm happy that the head of operations of the EFCC was the head of extractive in the EFCC before. And we also call the chairman of the EFCC petroleum minister, not for anything, because of his knowledge of the operations of the petroleum industry. Today, when PMS comes into this country, we transfer to the marketers at 113 naira, is that right, CFO? 113 naira for us to realize 165 at the pump. So you must sell to them at 113 naira to be able to deliver at 165 at the pump. This is the reality. So that means whatever is the cost, anything after that value is subsidy. So somebody has to pay for it. And just imagine, and this is very simple, you all have phones, just Google and see the current market value of petroleum. It's there, everybody has a phone here. Look at the Platts quotation for PMS. You will see that there is no way today that you can land a liter of fuel, PMS, to the pumps, even at the 419 or 445 naira exchange rate at less than 400 naira to the liter. So it's not possible. So every difference between 113 and that value is subsidy. That means in some instances, you may be subsidizing up to 290 to a liter. And with this regime, it is impossible for you to avoid all the wrong things that are happening. Round tripping, cross-border smuggling, document forgery. Anywhere you have arbitrage, and you'll agree with me, anywhere you have arbitrage, you will have these issues. And as long as arbitrage is there, you will continue to have these challenges. So you cannot hold NMPC accountable for it. Because it's a value chain that involves everything and everybody. And the only way you can resolve this, yes, of course, price it at market. But we also understand that you cannot price it at market today because of the obvious socioeconomic impact of the pricing of PMS. We understand this very perfectly. And every country is doing something about it. I know some of you may be aware that some countries, even in Europe, are today afraid of what will happen in December because of high energy costs. This is reality. Some developed countries have actually taken out taxes on PMS, on petroleum, so that they can bring down the cost. It's just another word for subsidy. No matter how they call it, it is subsidy. Introducing subsidy in different. So countries are doing something to bring down the cost of energy. This is our choice, and of course, in today's reality, this is really what we are dealing with. And therefore, delivery of value to the Federation account, and by law also today, the NNPC Limited will no longer be required to go to FAC. And the reason is very simple. It is expected to pay taxes and pay royalties and pay dividends. And therefore, this common conversation you are seeing in the media, NNPC has not gone to FAC since January. You know, it's really a misplaced expectation because our value should go to the tax authority and to the royalty collection authority, the commission. And therefore, Nigerians must get used to seeing NNPC off those transactions. Is this something that today we can do today? Absolutely not, because of one single issue, because we are not able to meet our fiscal obligations of tax and royalty because of the stark realities of the subsidy regime. And having said this, I would like to thank you all for your time. We will continue to collaborate with the National Assembly and all other stakeholders to bring in more transparency and to own up when we do wrong and correct it, and we take all the corrections that is necessary. Thank you very much.
The keynote address delivered by Maleki OFR, the Group Chief Executive Officer, NNPC Limited. And I think by now, those of you whose committees are relevant to his functions as the Group Chief Executive would have taken one or two notes, and at the end of it all, you'd have, a robust inside information when you take your decisions as policymakers in your respective committees. I think we can do better with that round of applause for Maleki OFR, the Group Chief Executive of NNPC Limited. Thank you so much, sir. And for the keynote address, it is pertinent then, and I still want to mention that we are still live on channels, television and AIT networks, respectively. May I, at this juncture, as I consider it very expedient, to then invite for his remarks the chief host of this event, Speaker of the House of Representatives, represented at this event by the Deputy Leader of the House of Representatives, Honorable Peterson Akbatasen. Please give us the Speaker's address at this point in time. Can we please give him a resounding applause as he makes his way here for his remarks as Speaker of the House of Representatives, who is also hosting this event. Right Honorable.
Thank you. The chairman of this committee, my distinguished colleagues, invited guests, heads of agencies here present, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome you all, invited guests, honorable members of the House of Representatives, partners and fellow citizens to this special Summit of Legislative Transparency and Accountability organized by the House Committee on Anti-Corruption. For over 6 decades, the oil and gas industry has played a critical role in the economy of Nigeria. The industry has provided thousands, perhaps even millions of jobs directly and indirectly to Nigerians. Income from oil and gas has funded the administration of government, national defense, and the development of public infrastructure to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars over the years. For better or worse, we are living in a world made possible by income from oil and gas and fossil fuel industry. Now that world is changing. On the one hand, the world is marching towards a future where the economic values of oil and gas is far diminished from what it used to be. Advancements in technology will reduce the global demand for fossil fuels. At the same time, technology is increasing globally by making it easier to access new deposits of shale oil and access fossil fuels in previously hard-to-reach environments. Amid this evolving paradigm, the oil and gas industry still faces unique challenges here at home. Due to theft and various acts of economic sabotage, we are experiencing a massive decline in crude oil production and export volumes. Our country is a victim of bad actors determined to achieve great personal wealth at our collective expense. At a time of severe financial constraints, the perpetrators of this brazen heist threaten our ability to meet the demands of governance and nation building. Their action effectively amounts to treason against our country, for which they must be held accountable. At the same time, We cannot be ignorant of global trends, and we cannot wish the facts away. And the reality is that the best days of fossil fuels industry are not ahead, but rather they are long past. There is a coming, and some might say, ongoing shift in the global policy conversation about the economics and regulation of the oil and gas industry. We must be clear about how this changes affect us and what we need to do so that we are not left behind with time. This summit has been organized to convince stakeholders in a frank conversation about the future of Nigeria oil and gas industry. Whereas predictions abound about the coming terminal global decline of the industry, we are under no obligation to facilitate that outcome. Our objective must be to use policy instruments to improve the industry's outlook and maximize its potential for however long that is possible. We have a joint obligation as policymakers, industry practitioners, and allied stakeholders. This summit is particularly important for legislators and policymakers to gain valuable insight into the issue and achieve clarity on the actions we need to take to achieve greater transparency and accountability in the oil and gas industry. I am therefore delighted that the committee has taken the initiative to bring us together like this. I thank all of you who have worked to make this summit possible. I am hopeful that our interactions will enrich our understanding and help devise a way forward in the best interest of our nation. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to declare this summit open to the glory of God. I wish you all a successful event. Thank you and good morning.
The Right Honourable Speaker of the House of Representatives, His Excellency Right Honourable Femi Gbajabiamila, CFR, speaking through the Deputy Leader of the House of Representatives, Honourable Peterson Akbatasen. If you intend to make it a clap, we can do better with that round of applause for him. Thank you. Thank you very much. So moving on, because time is of the essence, and we're still live on the networks of Channels Television and AIT, and because we want that our principals are able to deliver their speeches within the time frame that we have with the two television networks, we don't intend to bore you any further, but I'd like to please crave an indulgence to bear with us as I invite to the rostrum the number 3 citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency, Distinguished Senator Ahmad Ibrahim Lawan, PhD, GCON, represented at this summit by the Chairman Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption, Distinguished Senator Suleiman Abdu Kwari. Please can we welcome him with a resounding applause as he speaks for the President of the Senate. And having declared this summit open, he will lend his voice to what the Speaker just did. We can do better with that round of applause for him, please.
Distinguished colleagues, heads of agencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is an address by the President of the Senate, Distinguished Senator Ahmad Ibrahim Lawal, PhD, GCON, at the one-day summit on legislative transparency and accountability with the theme, Enhancing Transparency and Accountability in the oil and gas sector, challenges and prospects. The Senate President sends his regards to all participants, and the address reads thus: I am most delighted to be here at this important summit on legislative transparency and accountability, focusing on challenges, prospects, and enhancing transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector. This initiative by the House Committee on Anti-Corruption is a welcome development in light of our recent experiences, where revenues from oil have been declining because of the lack of transparency. It has become even more worrisome given the place of oil and gas in the nation's revenue earnings. Theft of oil has been alarming, resulting in our inability to meet our production quota and the failure to attain projected revenues. Added to these are leakages and wastages from improper records at a time of dwindling national resources, where funds are required for growth and development. While the government has embarked on measures to curb unacceptable sharp practices, the onus is still on us to further investigate what more can be done to nip the practices in the bud. One step to doing this is understanding the circumstances that gave rise to the lack of transparency and accountability through sessions like this, which will be a ground for the formulation of appropriate ideas. Whereas there might be external challenges that may not be able to deal with in the short term, we could as well discern ways of resolving them in the future through our actions in the present. The best approach to this is to be first clear with the problems we have in the bid to plan our prospects for tomorrow. With experts participating at this summit, we are sure to study the issues from different dimensions, considering how our varied experiences can help in shaping our conclusions. It is against this background that I urge us all to be realistic, frank, and forthcoming, because the subject of discussion concerns our very survival as a nation. As patriots, we owe ourselves the duty to provide solutions that will help to present and the future generations. This is the right step to take as stakeholders in the building of a virile economy where income channels will have to be sustainable. I am confident we are very ready to do this, going by our palpable enthusiasm and the good preparations the committee has made for a successful summit. I therefore wish us well, just as we look forward to your resolutions. It is now my singular pleasure and honor to join my colleague, the representative of the Honorable Speaker, to also declare this summit open. And God bless you all. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
His Excellency, Distinguished Senator Ahmad Ibrahim Lawan, PhD, GCON, President of the Senate and Chairman of the National Assembly, speaking through the Chairman of the Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption, Distinguished Senator Suleiman Abdul Kwari. Please can we give him another round of applause, please, as we move on. The summit has been declared open, and this actually put paid to the opening ceremony. But just before we go, there'll be need for us to have a group photograph. All the distinguished senators that are here, all the honorable members that are here, President of the Senate represented, Speaker represented, and then of course heads of agencies of government that are also here. I'm just seeing now, I beg your pardon, Distinguished Senator James Manager, a very ranking senator. I'd like to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming, sir. A round of applause for him. So can we have the chairman of the committee, who's the chief convener of this event, Honorable Shehu Nicholas Garba, please come up to the stage. President of the Senate and the Speaker will be the last to join you, but the rest of us can please take our positions here on the stage, and they'll be then joining us afterwards. Chairman of the committee, leading the pack. If we intend photographers, would you prefer that we have some chairs for them to sit? No, all of them will stand. Okay, fine. So the photographers have asked that we all stand, so please come up. Thank you very much. And this is to inform the distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives that they should please collect their lunch and dinner vouchers from their respective committee clerks. Up, sir. Yes, everyone will be up, sir. Honorable members, please join them, including chairman and deputy chairman of committees. Senators, please join them. Immediately after this group photograph, we will all go back to our seats and take the vote of thanks. I see that we are beginning to trickle out of the hall, hence the decision to have the group photograph first before the vote of thanks. Distinguished senators and honorable members, your words can come out in the pictures. We don't want that to happen. Honorable members of the House of Representatives that are here, and distinguished senators, can we have this picture quickly, please? The tall ones behind, the shorter ones in front. All of you are tall, by your own rights and in your own rights. Photographers, are you done? You're done? Thank you very much. Please, let's get seated. Let's take our seats for a very brief moment. Please, honorables, Chairman, sir. Chairman, sir. So can we take our seats briefly? The Group Chief Executive Officer, NNPC Limited, honorable members, Distinguished senators, please let's take our seats. In the course of recognizing senators, maybe as a result of a slip of tongue, I recognize Distinguished Senator Degi Bayo Barakoma as the chairman, local content, as against his being chairman, Senate Committee on Host Communities, as well as have his vice in the person of Distinguished Senator Professor Nora Dadute. So please, just to correct and put the record straight. Thank you. Please, let's take our seats briefly. Can we take our seats, Honorable Speaker? Rep of the Honorable Speaker, Rep of the President of the Senate, can we take our seats? Group Executive, Chief Executive Officer of NNPC, can we take our seats? Briefly, sir. Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Anti-Corruption, Honorable Dachung Musa Bagos, is going to be moving the vote of thanks. Can we possibly take our seats for a moment, please? I beg of you.